Hello everybody. We are going to talk about the very important system of the body that is known as the cardiovascular system, and I'm just going to give you an overview in this session. I'm not going to go into the very much micro details of the system and its components. It's basically a lecture for the beginners in anatomy. In a specific lecture, or in this video, I'm going to talk about the main components of the cardiovascular system, and then I will elaborate upon the blood vessels, the network of blood vessels in our body, and their types, their structure, their functions. And then in the next video, I'm going to elaborate upon the heart, its external features and the internal features. So let's start with the blood vessels. Here in front of you on the board, there is a sketch. It's a schematic drawing showing us the system in nutshell. So we have an organ which is responsible for receiving of blood and distribution of blood. And that is the pumping organ known as the heart or cardium. Okay? So here in the center, there is a heart sketched, and the heart is distinctly having 4 chambers. 2 chambers for receiving blood and 2 chambers for pumping it out. So the upper 2 chambers are the atria and the lower 2 chambers are the ventricles. Okay? So a right side of the heart and the left side of the heart. So why I am specifically mentioning about the right side of the heart and the left side, because we are going to discuss the blood vessels. So the components of blood vessels are basically rooting into the heart. Okay, so we have to keep in mind that the heart is distinctly divided into a right side and a left side. The right side is carrying deoxygenated blood and the left side is carrying oxygenated blood. Okay, now having said that, let's talk about the vessels. The network of the blood vessels which are present in our body are like very long tortuous pipelines. Okay, one type of vessel which is emerging from the heart, it is responsible for carrying the blood away from the heart. And by definition, that vessel is known as an artery. So the artery is a vessel or a pipe which is emerging from the heart, carrying blood away from the heart towards the body. Then we have another set of vessels which are basically bringing blood back towards the heart, or they are moving towards the heart, not away from heart. So these vessels are known as the veins. So the second component is a vein. Vein is a vessel which is bringing blood towards the heart. Then we have a third type of vessels which are very minute. They are almost invisible, microscopic vessels, and they are known as the capillaries. So the capillary is located, it's not going anywhere. It is a breaking down product of the artery, and that is located within the tissue spaces. So a network of capillaries, like a fish net, is located within the tissue spaces. So here in the drawing, you can see the artery is emerging from the heart. It's being represented with fresh red color because it is bringing oxygenated blood, rich with nutrients, towards the tissue. So this region is the tissue space. Then the artery will break down into smaller vessels, and then ultimately the network of capillaries is there, which is located within the tissue space. Then after the supply of nutrients and oxygen has been done, the blood will receive the waste products from the tissue spaces and will be collected by the collecting tubes And the collecting tubes which are bringing blood back towards the heart are known as the veins. So here in blue, you can see the capillary bed or the tissue bed is being irrigated by an artery, has been drained by a vein. It's just a schematic drawing. We have millions of such spaces and we have trillions of such vessels. Okay? So the vein is bringing blood back towards the right side of the heart. So you can see the left side is being, oxygenated blood is being emerging from the left side of the heart, going towards the tissue spaces, supplying or irrigating the entire body. Then the deoxygenated dirty blood has been collected from the tissue spaces, has been collected by the veins and ultimately being dumped on the right side of the heart. Okay, this is a closed network, and the center of this network is the heart itself, the receiving and the pumping organ. Okay, now there is another set of vessels which are not, that set is not carrying blood in it. It is rather having a much clearer fluid in its lumen or in its cavity. These tubes are basically emerging from the walls of the veins during the embryonic life, and then they make connections and they form a distinct network which is running parallel to the veins, and the direction of flow in this will also be towards the heart. So this green colored network of vessels is known as the lymphatic vessel or lymphatic network. What is lymph? I'm going to talk in detail, but you have to remember that this is the tissue space. It's been irrigated by blood, has been drained off by the vein, and then also the remaining interstitial fluid, which is having many inflammatory cells and the other substances, has to be drained off because we cannot afford to have accumulation of fluid within the tissue spaces. So the tissue space has to be neat and clean. So the blood will be traveling in the vein towards the heart, while the lymph, which is a clear tissue fluid, will be traveling within the lymphatic vessels again towards the heart. Which side of the heart? Right side of the heart. So you have to remember that there is one set of vessels which is bringing blood towards the body, that is the artery, and two sets of vessels which are they are draining blood and fluid away from the body towards the heart. They are the veins and the lymphatics. Okay, now let's elaborate upon the anatomical structure of these vessels. So I'll take one by one. Let's start from this drawing. This is a basic drawing showing us the wall of a tube, a vessel. Okay, so I have like certain structures to be labeled, right? So this is the lumen or the center of the vessel, which is carrying blood or lymph or whatever. Okay, while the wall is thick, just like any other tube's wall, and it has been divided into segments, right? So it's been like, if this is a tube, it's been covered by layers, and these layers are like coats, and we call them tunics. Okay, so the outermost layer is known as the tunica adventitia. Then this purple central or core of the vessel wall is known as the tunica. Tunic means a coat. Tunica media. It's in the middle. Then we have the innermost coat or layer, which is in direct contact with the blood which is flowing within the lumen, or the fluid which is flowing within the lumen. So that layer is the innermost. So we call it the tunica intima. It's an intimate relation with blood. Okay? So we have 3 tunics. That is the basic configuration of a vascular wall. The tunica adventitia is the outermost, and it is linking the vessel with the outer surrounding structures. That is tunica adventitia. Then the middle layer, which is the tunica media, it's the thickest of all. And then the innermost layer, which is in direct contact with the fluid inside the vessel, is known as the tunica intima. Now, keeping this architecture in your mind, let's start classifying the vessels. So we'll take from the artery, because that is the first vessel emerging from the heart. Okay, so we have, when we talk about the arteries, there are 3 basic types of arteries being present in our body. The large arteries, which are also known as the elastic arteries, they are the largest arteries. And it's easy to imagine that those arteries are directly related to the heart. They are emerging from the heart. So the largest artery of the body is known as the aorta, which is emerging from the left ventricle of the heart. So it's one type of elastic artery. Then we have other examples of elastic arteries, like pulmonary arteries, which are going to serve, or they are going to supply blood to the lungs. Then we have the subclavian artery, which is taking blood towards the upper limb. The common carotid artery, which is irrigating the head and neck region. And like if we go down in the abdomen, we have the common iliac arteries, which are going to serve the lower limbs and the pelvis perineum. The mesenteric arteries. These are the large elastic arteries. Then we have the muscular arteries, the second type, or the medium-sized arteries. These medium-sized arteries are basically penetrating through the compartments of muscles. Like the best example of medium or muscular arteries would be the arteries which are irrigating the heart muscle itself, like the coronary arteries. Then we have the brachial artery, the radial ulnar arteries, the femoral artery, the mesenteric arteries. They are the medium-sized arteries. They are also known as the muscular arteries. Then we have the small arteries, which are less than, like either 2 millimeters or less than 2 millimeters in diameter. Okay, so the small arteries are almost at the tissue level, and they are either 2 millimeters in diameter or less than 2 millimeters most of the times. And arterioles, which we just have seen. So in the capillary bed is being fed by a set of arterioles, and the arterioles are the smallest form of arteries. And these arterioles are basically, like, let me mention the diameter. So the arterioles are basically 20 to 100 micron. 20 to 100 microns in diameter will be the arterioles. Okay, and that is the end of the arterial chain. So we start from the elastic artery at the level of heart, then the muscular arteries at the peripheral level, then the smaller arteries just at the tissue level, and the arterioles, which are serving the capillary bed, and then that's the end of the arterial tree. Now, why we have labeled them as elastic, muscular, small arterioles? Why? Because if we keep this configuration, this architecture in our mind, there must be something different in the walls of these different types of arteries. That's why we have named them differently. Okay? Because their functions are different. Region-wise, the arteries they are performing different functions. So their responsibilities are different. That's why their walls configuration is also different. Like their structural architecture is different. So let's have a look first at the elastic arteries, which are the largest type of arteries. We have the tunica intima, just like the usual. Then we have the tunica media. Here you can see there's something some green color is also blended in that purple. That tunica media of the large arteries or the elastic arteries is having a very huge number of elastic fibers, strands of elastic tissue. Okay, so this green is representing the elastic fibers. In the large arteries, like for example, pulmonary artery, which is emerging from the right ventricle, or the aorta, which is emerging from the left ventricle, the elastic bands or fibers have been arranged so discretely that they have actually produced two layers or two laminae. Okay, so you can see the tunica intima is represented as red, and then we have a layer of green tissue which is known as the internal elastic, because it's made out of elastic tissue, elastic lamina. Okay, a flat sheet.